Christmas morning came with the usual rituals. Susan's cinnamon rolls burning slightly at the edges, Robert insisting the fireplace be lit even though the thermostat was set to 72 degrees, and Emily always arriving just late enough to be adored. The tree blinked from the corner of the room, strung with those same silver bulbs from my childhood. I could trace every crack in the ornaments, every chip on the ceramic snowman flaws we'd never mention, as if tradition itself required silence. My mother, Susan Clark, wore her velvet green robe like a queen opening court. She was glowing cheeks pink, smile wide. In her hand, a small silver-wrapped box with satin ribbon. She turned to Emily, my younger sister by 2 years, and their only child in spirit, if not by blood. "Open it." Susan beamed. Emily Lane, with her flawless blowout and blush-colored sweater, gave one of her signature gasps before she even touched the ribbon. That was her gift to the performance. She'd been doing it since we were kids, like life itself was a Hallmark audition. She peeled the paper back slowly, savoring the moment. Inside, a silver house key nestled in a velvet box. Emily squealed. I could already feel my father's proud grin forming before I looked. "We bought her a house," Susan said, voice catching, like she'd just announced a miracle. Emily threw her arms around both of them. I smiled. Not from joy, from muscle memory. Then Susan turned to me, eyes soft, voice low. "You'll understand someday," she said. But I already did. My gift was a plain envelope, unmarked, placed quietly into my lap by Robert, my father. No ceremony, no applause, just the sound of paper brushing fabric and a silence thick enough to burn through velvet and ribbon alike. I didn't open the envelope right away. It sat in my lap like something fragile and vaguely humiliating, a reminder not just of what I lacked, but of how far they'd go to make that lack feel normal. Robert, my father, had handed it to me with the same energy he used when passing a utility bill. No eye contact, no sentiment, just a quiet, "Here you go." Meanwhile, Emily was still squealing, holding her new house key up to the light like it was made of diamonds instead of debt and favoritism. Susan dabbed her eyes with a napkin and whispered something about marble countertops and walk-in closets. I looked down at the envelope again. Then no card, just my name handwritten in the corner in my mother's looping cursive, a style she'd perfected on PTA flyers and Christmas tags. I ran my finger along the flap, but didn't open it, because before I even knew what was inside, I already knew what it meant. It meant they saw me the same way they always had. I was 9 the first time I baked my own birthday cupcakes. Vanilla with too much oil and not enough sugar. Susan helped, but only because Emily had cheerleading practice and didn't want the kitchen to smell weird later. That morning, I came downstairs early, smiling, hopeful, thinking maybe there'd be balloons, a card, something. The kitchen was empty. No gifts, no candles, just the smell of burnt toast, and Susan humming to herself while brushing Emily's hair in the next room. That same year, Emily had a backyard party with bounce houses. Even neighbors we didn't like came by bearing glittery presents and compliments rehearsed for someone else's child. By the time I hit middle school, I'd stopped expecting anything. When I graduated with honors, Susan didn't come. Emily had a regional dance competition. I got a text that said, "So proud. Sorry we couldn't be there. Go get them." When I placed first at the State Science Fair wind turbine model fully functional, Robert showed up 15 minutes late and left before the awards. He had a golf tee time with someone important. The following week, when Emily landed a 30-second makeup commercial, they threw a dinner party. Champagne framed the product shot like it was a Pulitzer. There was a moment I go back to more than I should. Senior year academic awards night. I had worked hard, brutally hard, juggled 2 part-time jobs, maintained a 4.0 GPA, wrote papers until my fingers cramped and my eyes blurred. They called my name for the top scholarship in front of a packed auditorium. I walked on stage, scanned the crowd, and there she was. Susan, front row, not clapping, just scrolling on her phone. When I stepped down with the certificate still warm in my hands, she looked up and said loud enough for the parents nearby to hear, "Well, at least she's good at something." That one sentence sliced through the applause like a serrated knife. Even now I can still hear it. I used to wonder if I was imagining it all, if I was just the bitter child in the shadow of a shinier sibling. But favoritism doesn't whisper, it carves. It carves itself into holidays and dinners and all the moments where love is supposed to be loudest. That morning, watching Emily hold a house key while I held a lifeless envelope, I stopped wondering. I knew exactly where I stood. And I knew something else, too. This wasn't the moment to speak. Not yet. But it was coming. I opened the envelope with the same care you'd give a wound you already know will scar. There was only one sheet inside. No letter, no message, just a print out of a job listing an admin assistant role at a regional insurance office. Entry-level hourly. Near the bottom in ink that was unmistakably Robert's sharp block letters. All pressure and control he'd scrawled. Thought this might be more your speed. I stared at the page without blinking, my fingers cold. No one noticed. Emily was still talking about sliding doors and that cute reading nook. Susan was already refilling her coffee. I let the paper fall back into the envelope, folded it twice, then slid it under my leg, not to hide it, just to end it. The room was full of noise, but none of it reached me. All I could hear was the sound of that envelope scraping against itself. Thin paper over thin paper, like something whispering that I would never belong here the way she did. They hadn't given me less because they forgot. They gave me less because they believed I needed less, because I'd always figured it out. Paid my own rent, packed my own boxes, picked up the phone myself when the school nurse called. And I think that's what stung most. Not the insult, but the absolute confidence with which they delivered it. They weren't being cruel. They were being consistent. I hadn't planned on coming back. But guilt has a way of disguising itself as duty. Especially when your mother calls twice in 1 week, using words like your father and hurt and can't lift boxes without help. It wasn't the request that got me. It was the tone. That syrupy kind of concern layered over unspoken accusation. As if refusing would mean I was cold or selfish. As if decades of quiet dismissal could be wiped clean by one favor on a Saturday. So I said yes. I drove the 4 hours home, parked in the same driveway Robert still edged with a ruler and hedge clippers, and stepped into a house that smelled exactly like it always had: lemon polish, overcooked roast, and the faint hint of something burning that no one acknowledged. Emily wasn't there. "She's busy," Susan said with a sigh that somehow made it sound like her absence was my fault. I smiled, nodded, said the right things. By Saturday evening, we'd completed the checklist. Helped Robert lift storage bins in the garage. Listened to Susan complain about Emily's boyfriend endured a dinner where every topic circled back to beach house renovations. By 10 p.m., I couldn't sleep. The guest room, the one I used to call mine, still had my old track trophies on the shelf, like proof I'd been there once. But the walls felt tighter now, like they remembered how many words I'd swallowed inside them. I wandered barefoot and quiet. The door to Robert's office was slightly ajar. That alone was strange. He guarded the room like a church lights off blinds down locked drawers, passwords on everything, and yet there it was open. The safe was tucked behind the file cabinet, small and gray, but unmistakably his. And for the first time in my life, the door hung loose. I should have closed it and walked away. I should have assumed it was a mistake. But something held me there, some small tug in my gut that said, "What do they keep locked from you that Emily already knows?" I knelt slowly, carefully. Inside were rows of manila folders, all perfectly labeled. Tax returns, property deeds, bank statements, some familiar, some new. I flipped through them in silence. Then I found it. A sealed envelope, plain white on the front in Robert's handwriting, to be opened upon death. My hands went still. Then I opened it. Inside, a will. Not the one I remembered from years ago, the one they made a show of presenting at the dinner table when Emily turned 21, where everything was split evenly. This one was different. My name came first. Next to it, a parcel number, a property I'd never heard them mention. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw the next page, a deed purchased under my name years ago. And below that, a signed authorization transferring funds using my name. The signature was mine. But the slant was wrong. The curl in the R didn't match. My breath caught in my throat. Someone had signed for me. And based on the bank activity attached, it hadn't just happened once. My name had been used. My identity moved around like furniture in a room I wasn't allowed to enter. I sat there under the soft buzz of the desk lamp, trying to piece it together. It wasn't just that they had kept something from me. It was that they had built a second narrative and written me into it without my consent. I didn't say anything that weekend. At breakfast the next morning, Susan poured my coffee with her usual performative cheer, asked if I'd found a real job, yet then launched into a story about Emily's new podcast idea. Something about lifestyle branding and authentic influence. Robert barely looked up from his toast. I smiled, nodded, played the role they'd written for me years ago. By noon, I was packed and back on the road citing work obligations I didn't bother to fabricate. The moment I got home, I pulled my credit reports, every account under my name, every flag I had ignored. It didn't take long. The house, my house, the one they'd tucked under layers of silence, was real. Purchased 6 years ago, funded through a trust tied to my social security number. The address matched to the parcel on the deed I'd found in the safe. But that was only the beginning. What followed was an increasingly tangled web of financial activity. Quiet transfers between internal family accounts, reallocated funds, and at least one authorization bearing a signature that wasn't mine again. So I called someone I trusted, a lawyer friend from college who specialized in estate structures. I didn't give her the whole story, just the documents laid out in careful order, like I was trying to explain something I hadn't fully let myself feel yet. She called me back 2 days later. Her voice was calm, but her words were sharp. "Riley, if you wanted to pursue fraud, you'd have a case. But that's not what you want, is it?" She was right. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity and then control. So we started digging quietly, carefully. What emerged over the next few weeks was almost absurd in its irony. On paper, I was wealthier than I'd ever imagined. Not extravagantly so, but meaningfully. The house, a small investment account I didn't know existed, and ties to a family holding company used to shelter assets during Emily's business venture. The beach house was the most damning detail. That house, their pride, their retreat, their legacy had been mortgaged in secret 3 years prior to fund Emily's failed cosmetics line. They'd tried to fix it quietly. Robert likely believed he could repay it before the bank came knocking, but he couldn't. By the time I found the deed, the house was already flagged for auction. And that's where it got interesting, because I bought it not as Riley Clark. I set up a shell LLC, used my lawyer as a proxy, and submitted the purchase anonymously through a holding agent. It was legal, clean, undeniable. The paperwork took weeks. But when it was done, I sat there with a deed in my hands. And for the first time in my life, I owned something they wanted. It wasn't about the house. It was about history, about breaking the cycle, about making it clear that I had seen every inch of their neglect, and I'd chosen for once not to absorb it. They still didn't know. Susan kept texting about Christmas, asking if I'd be home, if I could bring wine, if I'd heard about Emily's new boyfriend. Robert emailed me a job listing with the subject line, "Something with stability." And I said nothing, because silence when it's yours isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the right moment. And that moment was coming. Christmas came again, as it always did. Same wreath on the front door. Same chipped snowman mugs in the kitchen. The same fireplace burning just hot enough to make the air feel dry but not warm. It was all so familiar. It felt fake. Emily was already there, dressed in a new cashmere set and hugging herself like the room owed her applause. Robert stood by the mantel with his usual mug of coffee, eyes scanning the room like he was doing inventory. Susan floated in and out, humming carols off key and asking no one in particular if the cinnamon rolls were done enough. I placed my gift under the tree without a word. Plain white box, no ribbon, no glitter, no tag, just wait. We went through the morning motions. Emily opened a designer handbag and gasped on cue. Susan cried. Robert chuckled. There was a toast to new chapters in dream homes. I nodded, sipped coffee, waited, and then it was my turn. I handed the box to Robert gently like it might break. He lifted it with both hands, surprised by how light it was. Smiled like he already knew it was nothing important. Emily giggled. "Probably socks," she said. Robert opened it slowly, not because he was cautious, but because he was indifferent. He peeled back the lid, saw the envelope sealed in wax. For a moment, he hesitated, then broke the seal and unfolded the papers inside. His face didn't change at first, just a tightening around the eyes. Then the color drained. He read the first page again, slower than notarized deed. My name, the property, the beach house. Then the second page, the forged signature, the legal warning from my attorney. His hand trembled just slightly. Susan leaned over his shoulder. She was still smiling when her eyes caught the bolded words near the top of the document. That smile faded like breath on glass. She turned to me. "Riley, what is this?" I met her eyes calm. "It's exactly what it looks like." She blinked. Robert didn't speak, not one word. Susan looked back down at the paper, then at him. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You didn't tell me." It wasn't a question. Her voice cracked. Not loudly, not theatrically. It broke the way bones do, clean, irreversible. Emily clutched her purse tighter as if it could shield her. She glanced around confused. No one explained. No one moved. The silence in the room thickened, dense and slow, like syrup spilled across the carpet, uncleanable. I stood up slowly, smoothing the hem of my sweater, and said it lightly like I was thanking them for eggs and coffee. "I won't be sharing the beach house. Not this time." There was no reply. Not even a nod, just the sound of paper shifting in Robert's hands as he tried and failed to make the words mean something else. Susan took a step back from him, like space might soften the betrayal. Her gaze darted between the papers and his face. And in that moment, I realized it wasn't just the truth I had delivered. It was the end of a performance they'd rehearsed for years. And the only person who hadn't missed their cue was me. No one spoke. Not for a long time. Robert sat perfectly still, holding the documents like they might disintegrate if he moved too fast. His fingers had stopped trembling. Now they were just locked in place, white-knuckled, unmoving. Susan stood beside him, frozen mid-step, her face caught between disbelief and something worse, realization. She wasn't angry yet. Anger takes energy. What I saw in her was the quiet devastation that only comes when a story you've built your entire life around finally breaks in half, and you're holding the pieces with no idea how to put them back. Emily hadn't said a word. She was clutching her new handbag with both hands like a child gripping a stuffed toy during a thunderstorm. She looked from face to face, blinking as though someone had started speaking in a language she didn't know. She had no frame of reference for what was happening. No script that more than anything told me how deep the lie had gone. No one had ever told her the truth either. Or maybe no one thought she could handle it. I stood there a moment longer, letting the silence stretch, letting it do the work I no longer needed to. They weren't going to apologize. They weren't going to explain. They weren't even going to ask how I'd found out, because some truths don't need to be spoken to be understood. When I reached for my coat, Susan flinched slightly like I'd raised a hand to her. I hadn't moved quickly, just deliberately, like someone who'd finally decided the scene was over. At the door, I paused. Not for drama, not for effect, just to look at them. Really look. Robert still staring at the papers, eyes refusing to blink. Susan crumbling by inches. Emily silent for once. And me still standing. "Just so we're clear," I said softly. "I won't be giving it back. Not the house, not my name, not anymore. That was all." Then I opened the door and let the cold December air pour in behind me like water after a dam breaks. It hit my face like truth, sharp, honest, clean. By evening, the snow had started. Soft, steady flakes drifted down in the kind of silence only winter understands, where the air doesn't just fall quiet, it settles. Every sound dulled, every edge softened. I sat in an old armchair near the window of the beach house. My beach house. A blanket around my shoulders, coffee cooling slowly beside me. No music, no voices, just the faint creak of the wood as the wind moved across the siding. The place wasn't glamorous. It needed new floors. The chimney smoked when it shouldn't. The thermostat clicked 3 times before doing anything useful. But it was mine and no one had handed it to me. They never meant for me to have it. They'd tried to hide it, bury it in paperwork and assumptions and the comfort of thinking I wouldn't look too closely. That I wouldn't ask questions. That I'd keep playing my role. The quiet one, the capable one, the girl who always cleaned up but never asked why the mess existed in the first place. I didn't feel triumphant. No part of this felt like victory. It felt like release, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years without even realizing it. I thought for a moment about calling someone a friend, a voice outside the family, just to say it out loud what I'd done, what I'd uncovered, what I'd taken back. But I didn't. Some stories don't need witnesses. Some peace doesn't need applause. I didn't know if they'd reach out. If Susan would call voice heavy with half-truths and carefully timed regret. If Robert would send one of his articles clipped from the local paper pretending like nothing had happened. If Emily would send a meme like she always did pretending we were still close. Maybe they would. Maybe not. I no longer cared. I wasn't angry. I wasn't looking for reconciliation. I'd drawn a line not in anger, but in survival. And this time I wasn't stepping back over it. The snow kept falling slow and certain. I watched it coat the railings, then the trees, then the edges of the ocean. Funny thing is, now that I finally own the one thing they cherished most, I don't even want it. But I needed them to know I could take it. Just like they took pieces of me year by year wrapped in silence and called it love. If you've ever left a room and never looked back, just leave a single dot. I'll know you were here. Riley learns that her worth isn't defined by her family's favoritism or neglect, but by her own actions and resilience. Through uncovering her parents' deceit, using her identity for financial gain, she realizes the power of reclaiming her narrative. By securing the beach house, she breaks free from the cycle of being overlooked, choosing clarity and control over resentment. The lesson isn't about vengeance, but about self-ownership. Riley understands that silence when chosen is strength, and standing up for herself means refusing to accept less than she deserves, even if it means walking away from those who undervalued her.
The call came on a Thursday morning while I was reviewing the latest quarterly reports for my retail and real estate empire. Christopher Martinez from Elite Celebrations sounded deeply uncomfortable as he delivered the message that would permanently alter my family's understanding of who I really was. Miss Thompson, I'm calling about your brother Ryan's housewarming celebration this Saturday. Your parents have requested that we remove you from the guest list, but they still expect your $35,000 contribution to remain in place for the event. I paused, setting down the financial statements showing record profits from my furniture retail chain. Through my office windows, I could see the sprawling residential development where Ryan had just purchased his dream home. A development I'd built and still owned every square foot of. Remove me from the guest list? What explanation did they provide? Christopher's voice became strained. They mentioned wanting to maintain a certain atmosphere for the celebration. Your mother specifically said that Ryan's new neighbors and some important business contacts would be attending, and they felt your presence might not project the right image for his new life in the upscale community. The irony was devastating. For the past 7 years, my family had treated me like the black sheep, the daughter who'd wasted her education on retail work instead of pursuing a prestigious career. They had no idea that my retail work had evolved into Aurora Holdings, a $2.9 billion empire spanning luxury furniture stores, residential developments and hospitality services. I see. And they expect me to fund a party celebrating a house purchase in a community I'm apparently not sophisticated enough to visit. It appears so, yes. Your brother Ryan mentioned that this housewarming is crucial for establishing relationships with his new neighbors and making the right impression in Willowbrook Estates. Willowbrook Estates. The luxury residential community I designed and developed over the past 3 years, where Ryan had just purchased a home using financing I'd secretly arranged through my lending subsidiary. Christopher, I need you to cancel the entire event. I'm sorry, what? But ma'am, it's your brother's housewarming celebration. I can't just. Yes, you can. Because the celebration is being held at a home in Willowbrook Estates, which I developed and still own. The furniture throughout his house came from Aurora Home Collections, my store. The catering is being provided by Pinnacle Events, also mine. And the community clubhouse where the party is scheduled? That's mine too. The silence on the other end stretched for nearly 25 seconds. Miss Thompson, I don't understand. The contracts all show different company names. All subsidiaries of Aurora Holdings. I'll have my legal team send over the ownership documentation within the hour. Consider this official notice that all services are being withdrawn and the event space is no longer available. After hanging up, I sat in my executive chair, looking out at the business empire I'd built while my family dismissed me as a retail failure. It had started with a small furniture boutique I'd opened after college, much to my parents' disappointment. They'd wanted me to use my business degree for a corporate career, not to sell furniture like a glorified salesperson. What they never understood was that I hadn't failed at their version of success. I'd simply discovered that creating beautiful spaces where families built their lives was more meaningful than climbing someone else's corporate ladder. Every dollar I'd made from that first store had been reinvested. More locations than manufacturing than real estate development until I controlled everything from the furniture people bought to the communities where they lived. But to them I was still just Sophia, the disappointment who'd chosen retail over respectability. My phone buzzed. Ryan's name appeared on the screen. Sophia, what the hell did you do? The party planner just called me in tears saying the housewarming is cancelled. Good afternoon to you too, Ryan. He claims you own the catering company and somehow the clubhouse. That's impossible. It's completely possible. I own all of them. You work at a furniture store. I own 17 furniture stores across 4 states, plus the manufacturing facilities that produce the custom pieces, plus the residential developments where your customers live, including the one where you just bought your house. The silence told me he was processing this information. You're lying. I'm sending you some documents. After you review them, we can continue this conversation. I hung up and instructed my assistant to prepare a comprehensive portfolio of my holdings, focusing on Willowbrook Estates and the furniture pieces Ryan had purchased for his new home. 20 minutes later, my phone started ringing. First Ryan again, then my mother, then my father. I let them all go to voicemail while I reviewed the guest list Christopher had sent me earlier. A list that included 3 families who'd purchased homes in my other developments and 2 business owners who regularly bought furniture from my commercial division. Ryan's message was panicked. Sophia, I've seen the documents. I don't understand how this is possible, but we need to talk. This is my housewarming. We can't cancel it now. My mother's message was classic manipulation. Sophia, darling, Ryan showed me some very confusing paperwork. We had no idea you'd expanded your little furniture business so significantly. But family is family, and we need to support Ryan's fresh start in his new community. My father's message was more direct. Sophia, this is your father. I've reviewed the documentation Ryan provided. We clearly need to have a family meeting. There are obviously things we need to understand about your business activities. I waited until evening to return their calls, starting with my parents. They were at Ryan's new house, no doubt strategizing how to handle their suddenly successful daughter. Sophia. My mother's voice was forced brightness. We've been trying to reach you all day. I know, Mom. I've been working. Honey, Ryan showed us the most impressive business portfolio. We had no idea you'd grown your furniture shop into something so substantial. There it was. Even in her attempt at acknowledgement, she couldn't help but refer to my empire as a furniture shop that had grown up. Is that what you wanted to discuss? My father took the phone. Sophia, we owe you an apology. We didn't realize the scope of what you've built. But surely we can resolve this situation with Ryan's housewarming party. There's nothing to resolve, Dad. You and Mom decided I wasn't suitable company for Ryan's celebration, but you still wanted my money to pay for it. That's not. Look, maybe we made an error in judgment. But this is about Ryan establishing himself in his new community, not about us. We want you there. Do you? Or do you want me there now that you know I'm the developer who built his community? Sophia, that's not fair. Isn't it? 3 months ago you asked me when I was going to stop playing store and get a real job with career advancement potential. You suggested I consider applying for management positions at department stores. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. My stores competed directly with those department stores and were winning. People change, sweetheart. We can do better. I hope so. But change requires acknowledging what went wrong. You both spent years being embarrassed by my career choice while I was building something that provides homes and furnishings for thousands of families. We were never embarrassed. Dad, you introduced me to people as your daughter, who works in furniture sales, while introducing Ryan as our successful financial advisor. The difference in tone was unmistakable. My mother took the phone back. Sophia, we love you. We've always been proud of your entrepreneurial spirit. My entrepreneurial spirit? Not my business success, not my ability to build something meaningful, but my spirit. Like I was a child with ambitious daydreams. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And it's fine, Mom. I understand now where I stand in this family. So what happens now? My father asked quietly. Now Ryan finds a new venue for his party, new catering, and new furniture if he wants to return what he bought from my stores. Sophia, please. Think about your brother's future in this community. I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how he'll explain to his new neighbors why his sister isn't welcome at his housewarming party in the community she built. After hanging up, I made a decision that would reshape our family dynamics permanently. I called my head of community relations and had her compile a detailed report of every financial interaction I'd had with my family over the past 5 years. The results were revealing. I'd been quietly supporting their lifestyle without them realizing it. Ryan's mortgage had been approved through a lending partner I had significant influence with at rates well below market. My parents' home renovation had used contractors from my preferred vendor list at substantial discounts. Their furniture purchases over the years had all received customer loyalty discounts that actually came from my personal account. I'd been the invisible hand making their comfortable lifestyle more affordable while they looked down on me for choosing retail over a prestigious career. But I also did something else. I called the community center at my newest development and arranged for a surprise housewarming celebration for Ryan. Not the networking event they'd planned, but a genuine welcome party with the neighbors who'd actually be living near him for years to come. If my parents wanted to exclude me from their status-seeking event, fine. But I was still going to welcome my brother to the community properly. Saturday morning arrived with beautiful weather. I was in my home office when my security system alerted me to visitors at the gate. Through the camera, I saw my mother's Mercedes with my entire family inside. I'd never invited them to my house. They'd never known where I lived. The estate was a custom home I'd built on the premium lot in my first residential development, with views of the mountains and private lake access. How did you find me? I asked through the intercom. We asked the security guard at Willowbrook Estates, Ryan said, sounding stressed. Sophia, we need to talk. I buzzed them through, curious about what they'd learned from their visit to the development. They drove slowly up the private driveway, past the professionally landscaped gardens and 3-car garage, until they reached the main house. Through my office window, I watched them sit in the car for several minutes, taking in the scope of the property. When they finally approached the front door, my mother was speechless. Sophia, this house is extraordinary. Thank you. Would you like to come in? They followed me through the grand foyer with its custom chandelier and floating staircase, past the great room with its floor-to-ceiling stone fireplace, to the kitchen that opened onto the outdoor living space with its infinity pool and mountain views. The architecture is stunning, Ryan whispered, finally finding his voice. I worked with the design team to create something that maximized the lot's potential. All the furniture is from my collections, of course. My father was examining the custom millwork and built-in entertainment center. Sophia, this must have cost. I own it outright. No mortgage. The lot was the premium location in the development and I kept it for myself. Ryan sank into one of the kitchen island stools. Why didn't you ever tell us you were this successful? Because I wanted you to be proud of me for building something meaningful, not impressed by my bank account. I wanted you to invite me to your housewarming because I'm your sister, Not because I can afford to pay for it. But we are proud of you, he protested. Really? When was the last time any of you asked about my business without suggesting I should consider a more traditional career path? None of them could answer. My mother leaned against the counter. Sophia, we made mistakes. We didn't understand what you were building because we were too focused on conventional definitions of success. You made assumptions about my work because it involved retail, and you thought retail was beneath the family's standards. That's fair, my father admitted. We were wrong to judge your choices without understanding them. Dad, what do you think I do all day? Honestly, I assumed you managed a furniture store. I design communities where families will live for decades. I create furniture that becomes part of their most important moments. I employ 300 people across 4 states. I help young families buy their first homes through financing programs I've developed. Ryan looked around the kitchen, really seeing it for the first time. All this furniture. You designed it? Every piece. The dining table where your family will eat holiday meals, the sofa where you'll watch movies, the bed where you'll sleep. I designed all of it specifically for your home's layout and your lifestyle. I had no idea. Biz, you never asked. You assumed that because I work with furniture, the work wasn't sophisticated or meaningful. My phone chimed with a text from my community relations manager. Neighborhood welcome party ready at community center. 15 families confirmed attendance. Actually, I said, there's something you should know. I've organized a different kind of housewarming for you. What do you mean? Ryan asked. Your actual neighbors, the families who live around you who'll be part of your daily life in this community, are gathering at the clubhouse in an hour for a genuine welcome party. I've arranged for a casual barbecue where you can meet the people who'll become your real friends over the years. You did this. Ryan's voice was thick with emotion. You deserve to be welcomed into the community properly. But by the people who'll actually be your neighbors, not by those you're trying to impress for business purposes. My mother started crying. Sophia, we're so sorry. We turned your celebration into a networking event instead of honoring your new home. Ryan's celebration, I corrected. And yes, you did. Can you forgive us? My father asked. I looked at my family, really looked at them. They were flawed, they'd hurt me, but they were still my family. I can forgive you. But things have to change. I won't be treated like the embarrassing family member who's only valuable for her checkbook. They will change, my mother promised. We want to understand what you've built and why it matters to you. And we want to support your vision, Ryan added. I had no idea you'd created this entire community. It's incredible, Sophia. That afternoon, I watched Ryan meet his neighbors at the community center I'd designed. 15 families had come to welcome him. Young couples with children, retirees who'd become the neighborhood's unofficial grandparents, professionals who'd chosen Willowbrook for its sense of community rather than its prestige. My father gave a toast that surprised me. To my son Ryan, who's found not just a beautiful house but a real community. And to my daughter Sophia, who taught us today that the most impressive success is creating something that helps other people build their lives. Later, as the sun set over the lake, Ryan found me by the community fire pit. Sophia, I need to apologize. For what? For never asking what you actually do. For assuming that because you work with furniture and homes, it wasn't as important as my financial advising work. And now I understand that you create the foundation for everything I help people plan for. You build the communities where they'll live, design the spaces where they'll raise their families. That's more meaningful than managing investment portfolios. Both are important, Ryan, but they're different kinds of important. I want to learn from you. About building something that lasts, about creating value that goes beyond financial returns. What are you thinking? Maybe I could help families in your developments with financial planning. Not just investments, but helping them understand how to build long-term wealth through homeownership and community investment. That's actually a brilliant idea. My residents often ask about financial planning, especially the younger families. Really? We could develop a program that helps families make the most of their investment in community living. 6 months later, I was walking through my newest development with Ryan, who'd relocated his financial planning practice to serve families in my communities. He discovered that helping young families achieve homeownership was more fulfilling than managing portfolios for wealthy retirees. The Johnsons closed on their house yesterday, he reported, consulting his tablet. That's the third first-time buyer this month who said our financial literacy workshops made homeownership possible for them. Excellent. What about the community center programming? Booked solid. The cooking classes in your demonstration kitchen are especially popular, and the kids' entrepreneurship program has a waiting list. You seem happy, Ryan. I am. I never realized how much more meaningful work could be when it's connected to something bigger than individual transactions. That evening, I had dinner with my parents at their house, something that had become a weekly tradition since the housewarming incident. My mother was showing me photos from the latest community garden project while my father grilled vegetables grown by residents in the shared greenhouse. Ryan seems to love his new work, my mother said. He's found his purpose. It just took him a while to realize that helping families build community wealth was more fulfilling than managing investment accounts for people who already had plenty. Like you found your purpose in creating homes and communities, my father added. It wasn't always easy being the family disappointment. You were never a disappointment, Sophia. We were just too narrow-minded to understand that success could look different from what we expected. And too proud to admit when we were wrong, my mother added. Ryan arrived with his wife and their toddler for dessert, another new tradition. Their daughter ran straight to me, excited to show me her latest art project created in the community center's kids' studio. Aunt Sophia, look what I made for your office. It's beautiful, sweetheart. What is it? It's our house and all our neighbors' houses and everyone is happy. That's perfect. I'll hang it right next to my desk. As I watched my family gathered around the dinner table, sharing stories about their days and planning community events together, I realized that canceling the housewarming party had been the best decision I could have made. Not because it punished them, but because it forced all of us to confront what really mattered. Now, instead of being the family embarrassment who secretly funded everyone's lifestyle, I was simply Sophia, successful entrepreneur, devoted sister and daughter, and the person who'd helped Ryan find work that fulfilled him. And that, I thought as my niece showed me her drawings of the playground she wanted me to build in the next development, was worth every uncomfortable conversation it had taken to get here. The following month, as I stood in my office watching Ryan help a young couple sign the papers for their first home in my newest community, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I'd proven my worth to my family, but because we'd finally learned to value each other's contributions and support each other's dreams without conditions. That, more than any business success, was the Real Foundation. The announcement came right after Mom brought out her famous apple pie, as if my brother Marcus had been waiting for the perfect moment to deliver what he clearly thought would be devastating news. I have something important to tell everyone, Marcus said, standing up at the head of our family's dining table, his chest puffed out with self-importance. Jennifer and I have been discussing the future of Hammond Construction, and we've decided it's time to sell. My sister-in-law Jennifer beamed beside him, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light from Mom's crystal chandelier. Dad nodded approvingly from his seat, while Mom clasped her hands together with excitement. The Meridian Group made us an offer we couldn't refuse, Marcus continued, clearly enjoying the attention. $12 million for the entire company. A chorus of congratulations erupted around the table. My sister Emma practically squealed with delight, already calculating her share. My nephew and niece, home from college, started talking about new cars and study abroad programs. Then Marcus looked directly at me, his smile turning cruel. Of course, since Sophia never contributed anything meaningful to the business, she won't be getting a share of the proceeds. That seems fair, Dad said with a dismissive wave toward my end of the table. Sophia made her choices when she decided to pursue that art degree instead of joining the family business. We're selling the family business. You get nothing, Marcus repeated, clearly savoring each word. Everyone nodded in agreement, their faces showing a mixture of excitement about their windfall and satisfaction that I was being excluded. Emma even had the audacity to pat my hand sympathetically as if I were a charity case. I just smiled and pulled out my phone. Actually, I said calmly, scrolling to my email, I bought it 3 months ago. The room went dead silent. Marcus's fork, loaded with apple pie, froze halfway to his mouth. What did you just say? Dad demanded. I turned my phone screen toward the table, showing the email confirmation from my lawyers. I said I bought Hammond Construction 3 months ago. Through my holding company, Meridian Acquisitions LLC. Their forks dropped when they realized what I was telling them. Marcus's face went from smug satisfaction to pale confusion in the span of 3 seconds. That's impossible. The Meridian Group is buying us. We're meeting with them next week to finalize the deal. Marcus, I said gently, I am the Meridian Group. The silence stretched so long I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Finally, Jennifer found her voice. But you're an artist. You paint pictures for tourists. You live in that tiny studio apartment above the coffee shop. I do paint, I agreed. It's one of my hobbies. As for where I live, I prefer to keep my personal and professional lives separate. Dad leaned forward, his face red with either anger or confusion. Sophia, what exactly are you claiming here? I pulled up another document on my phone, the official transfer of ownership papers. I'm not claiming anything, Dad. I'm stating a fact. As of September 15th, I own 100% of Hammond Construction, along with all its assets, contracts, and subsidiaries. But we never agreed to sell to you. Marcus sputtered. You never asked who you were selling to. You just saw the offer amount and assumed it was from some big corporation. I scrolled through my messages. Actually, let me read you the email thread. This is from your business manager, Tom Bradley, on September 10th. Marcus, we've received a serious offer from Meridian Acquisitions. They're offering $12 million cash, no financing contingencies, 30-day close. I strongly recommend we accept. I looked up at Marcus's increasingly pale face. And your response was, if the money's real, I don't care who's buying. Just get it done. Mom set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. Sophia, I don't understand. Where would you get $12 million? From my other businesses, Mom. The ones you've never asked about because you assumed I was failing. Emma laughed nervously. What other businesses? You sell paintings at the farmer's market. I do sell paintings at the farmer's market, I confirmed. Under the name S. Hammond. But I also own Meridian Acquisitions, which has a portfolio worth approximately $200 million. We specialize in acquiring underperforming construction and development companies, modernizing their operations and increasing their profitability. The room was so quiet I could hear my nephew's phone buzzing with notifications from across the table. That's impossible, Jennifer said again, but her voice lacked conviction. Is it? I pulled up my company's website on my phone and handed it to her. Meridian Acquisitions LC. Founded 5 years ago. Headquarters in downtown Portland. CEO and founder Sophia Hammond. Jennifer's eyes widened as she scrolled through the website. This shows you own 15 companies. 16 now, I corrected. Hammond Construction makes 16. Marcus grabbed the phone from his wife's hands, staring at the screen in disbelief. But we would have known. Someone would have told us. Told you what? That the daughter you dismissed as a failure had built a business empire? Why would anyone tell you that when you never asked? Dad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. This is ridiculous. You can't just buy our family business without telling us. Actually, I can. It's called a legal business transaction. You put the company up for sale, I made an offer, you accepted. Everything was handled through lawyers and business managers. The fact that you never bothered to research who was buying your company is your oversight, not my deception. But why? Mom asked, tears starting to form in her eyes. Why would you do this to us? I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them, for the first time in years. Do this to you? Mom, I saved your business. Do you have any idea what Hammond Construction's actual financial situation was before I bought it? Marcus crossed his arms defensively. We were doing fine. You were 3 months away from bankruptcy. I pulled out a folder I'd brought with me, knowing this conversation would eventually happen. 2 years of declining revenue, $800,000 in unpaid vendor bills, 3 major contracts in default, and a lawsuit from the city over safety violations on the Morrison Bridge project. I spread the financial documents across the table like a poker player revealing a winning hand. The only reason the Meridian Group, my company, was willing to offer $12 million was because I knew I could turn it around. Any other buyer would have offered maybe $3 million, and that's if they were feeling generous. Jennifer picked up one of the financial statements, her face growing paler as she read. Marcus, you told me the business was thriving. It was. Marcus insisted. We had some temporary cash flow issues, but nothing serious. Marcus, I said quietly, you hadn't paid your employees in 6 weeks. I know because they were calling my personal number, asking if I could help them get in touch with someone who could approve their paychecks. Dad sank back into his chair. How did you know about any of this? Because Tom Bradley has been sending me the company's financial reports for 2 years. He was worried about the direction things were heading and thought maybe I could help, given my background in business acquisitions. Tom was sharing confidential information with you? Marcus's voice cracked with indignation. Tom was trying to save the company Dad built from the ground up. The company that bears our family name. The company you were running into the ground. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times, marking the passage of another hour in what had become the longest Christmas dinner in family history. So what happens now? Emma asked in a small voice. Do we all lose our jobs? Emma, you haven't worked for Hammond Construction in 5 years. You're a yoga instructor. I meant Marcus and Dad. I looked at my brother who was staring at his hands. That depends on Marcus. I bought the company because I believe it can be successful again. But it needs competent leadership. I am competent. Marcus snapped. Are you? Because the financial records show a different story. Revenue down 40% over 2 years, customer satisfaction scores at an all-time low. 3 of your biggest clients have already indicated they won't renew their contracts. I pulled out another document. This is from Wilson Development, your biggest client. They're canceling their $2.8 million project because of repeated delays and quality issues. The email specifically mentions leadership problems and lack of professional accountability. Marcus's face went through several shades of red before settling on a mottled purple. You don't understand the construction business. It's not like whatever it is you do. What I do, Marcus, is fix failing companies. And Hammond Construction is definitely failing. Dad finally spoke up. What are your terms? Pie terms. For keeping the company running. For letting Marcus keep his job. I had been waiting for this question for 3 months. Here's what's going to happen. Hammond Construction is going to undergo a complete operational restructuring. New management systems, updated safety protocols, modern equipment and proper financial controls. And Marcus? Jennifer asked. Marcus can stay but not as CEO. He'll be project supervisor for residential builds, with a direct supervisor monitoring his work. If he proves he can handle that responsibility, we can discuss advancement opportunities in 2 years. That's a demotion. Marcus shouted. That's reality. You're not qualified to run a $12 million company, Marcus. The evidence is overwhelming. Jennifer grabbed Marcus's arm. But we were counting on the sale money. We put a deposit down on a house in Bend. We have plans. Those plans were based on selling a company that was worth $12 million, I pointed out. A company that was actually worth maybe $3 million due to its debt and liabilities. I paid $12 million because I knew I could fix it and because it's our family legacy. So we get nothing? Emma asked. You get jobs if you want them. Real jobs with real responsibilities. Emma, you could run our new customer relations department. Dad, you could head up our quality control division. Jennifer, we need someone to manage our new digital marketing initiatives. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow falling in Mom's backyard. Here's what I'm offering. The $12 million that Marcus thought he was getting from selling the company? That money is going back into the business. New equipment, facility upgrades, technology improvements, employee bonuses and expansion capital. But our house in Bend, Jennifer whispered. We'll have to wait until you earn it through actual work contribution. Marcus stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. This is insane. You can't just take over our lives like this. I'm not taking over your lives, Marcus. I'm offering to save them. The alternative is that Hammond Construction goes bankrupt in 3 months. Dad loses everything he spent 40 years building, and all of you are unemployed in a terrible job market. We could have sold to someone else, he insisted. No, Marcus, you couldn't have. I spent 6 months researching potential buyers before making my offer. 3 companies looked at Hammond Construction. 2 of them walked away after seeing the financial records. The third offered $2.1 million, contingent on major staff reductions and facility closures. I turned back to face my family. I paid $12 million because I love this family even when you don't see my value. I paid $12 million because Dad deserves to see his life's work continue. And I paid $12 million because I knew I could turn Hammond Construction into something worth being proud of again. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Dad spoke. Sophia, why didn't you tell us about your success? When would I have told you, Dad? At last year's Christmas dinner when Marcus spent an hour explaining why business degrees are worthless? Or at Emma's birthday party when you told everyone I was still trying to find myself, at 32 years old? We never meant to dismiss you, Mom said quietly. Maybe not intentionally. But you made assumptions about my life based on what you could see, rather than asking what you couldn't see. I pulled out my business card and set it on the table. I own 16 companies across 4 states. I employ over 800 people. Last year, my businesses generated $47 million in revenue. And yes, I also paint watercolors at the farmer's market on Saturday mornings, because I enjoy it. Jennifer picked up my business card, examining it like it might be fake. This says you're the CEO of Meridian Acquisitions. That's correct. But your apartment above the coffee shop is one of 3 properties I own in the city. I also have a house in the hills and a condo in Seattle. I live above the coffee shop because I like being part of the community and because it keeps me grounded. Marcus sat back down heavily. So what you're telling us is that we've been, what? Patronizing you? For years. Yes, Marcus. That's exactly what I'm telling you. And now you own our family business. Yes. And we work for you. If you choose to. The jobs I mentioned are real offers with competitive salaries and benefits. But they require actual work and accountability. Emma raised her hand tentatively. What about our shares of the sale money? We were all supposed to get something when the business sold. The business did sell. To me. And instead of taking the money and running, I'm reinvesting it to make Hammond Construction stronger. If you work for the company and help make it successful, you'll benefit through profit sharing, bonuses, and eventually stock options. So we have to earn what we thought we were getting for free, Dad summarized. Dad, you never got anything for free. You built Hammond Construction from nothing. You earned every dollar it's worth. But Marcus was about to sell your life's work to the lowest bidder and walk away with cash while your employees lost their jobs and your reputation got destroyed. I sat back down at the table. I'm offering all of you the chance to be part of something bigger. To help me turn Hammond Construction into the kind of company you can actually be proud to have your name on. And if we say no? Marcus asked. Then you say no. I'll hire other people to run the company and you can figure out your own career paths. But the offer stands for 30 days. Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Sophia, I'm sorry. We should have asked more questions about your life. We should have been more supportive. We should have trusted you, Dad added. And we should have recognized that just because you chose a different path doesn't mean you weren't successful. Marcus looked at Jennifer, who nodded encouragingly. Sophia, if I take the job you're offering, will you teach me how to actually run a construction company properly? For the first time all evening I smiled genuinely. Marcus, I thought you'd never ask. 3 months later, I stood in the newly renovated offices of Hammond Construction, watching Marcus lead a client meeting with confidence I'd never seen from him before. He'd thrown himself into learning modern project management techniques, and his natural charisma was finally being channeled into productive leadership. Emma had surprised everyone by turning out to be a natural at customer relations, her yoga instructor's people skills translating perfectly to client management. Dad was enjoying his quality control role, finally getting to focus on craftsmanship rather than paperwork. Even Jennifer had found her niche, running our social media presence and generating more leads than we'd seen in years. The company that had been hemorrhaging money 6 months ago was now profitable, growing, and had a waiting list of clients. Sophia, Marcus called out as the clients left, can you look at these projections for the Riverside Development Project? I walked over to his desk, genuinely impressed by the thoroughness of his planning. This looks great, Marcus. You've really thought through the logistics. I learned from the best, he said with a grin. Even if it took me 32 years to realize who that was. As I drove home that evening past the coffee shop where I still kept my small apartment, I reflected on how dramatically things had changed. My family finally knew who I really was. Hammond Construction was thriving, and for the first time in years I was looking forward to next Christmas dinner. Sometimes the best gift you can give your family isn't what they want. It's what they need even when they don't realize they need it.